Hi there, I'm Vincent Boss and I provide dating and self-improvement advice. And in today's podcast, we're going to be discussing the truth on if you should say bye to your ex. I provide audio coaching for breakup recovery, trying to get an ex back, attracting someone new, and life coaching. Visit www.dateme.tips for more details. Please check your spam and junk folders if you are expecting an email from me. So now let's get back into today's podcast, and today we are discussing the truth on if you should say bye to your ex. So if you have been through a breakup, one of the most confusing elements is whether or not you should say goodbye to your ex in varying circumstances. In today's podcast, I'll be discussing 3 different situations and whether a dumper or dumpee should say bye to their ex. So let's get straight into this, and point number 1 is post-breakup closure. So when we're considering a breakup, there are 2 elements to this process. There is the breakup itself, and then when the dust has settled, from that point on, we're referring to this as post-breakup. But during this time, it can be somewhat confusing as to when the breakup ends and post-breakup begins. And this is where we're answering in point number 1 of today's podcast about the truth on if you should say bye to your ex. We're considering post-breakup closure. So during the time of a breakup, of course, we will get to a stage where the person who is now the dumper is going to say in their own words, it's over. Now at this moment, there could be varying ways in which we could actually go about this process. Are they actually going to be giving out a love-felt goodbye, so to speak, or are they just going to vanish? Well, if you're a dumper and you're listening to this, and you're asking my advice about what you should be doing during the breakup, well, I suggest that you need to be saying everything as clearly as you can during this time, explaining your reasoning, and certainly saying goodbye, giving your ex some level of closure. I believe that if you're the dumper in this instance, you need to be making sure that your dumpee is not confused by anything in how it is left. Because if they are confused, this is when we get into the post-breakup scenario, where a dumpee is still feeling that there is something still to be said. Now, if you've been dumped and want to try to get your ex back, you will likely want something more to be said, no matter whether this is clear or unclear, because of course you want to change your ex's mind. But in particular, if you're a bit confused about whether this is a permanent breakup or maybe just a temporary break from one another, this could be really, really confusing as to whether or not you should be saying your goodbyes, saying those last words you want to say with one another within a relationship, or whether or not you're going to be reconnecting in a month's time. Now, at the end of the day, nobody knows how the future is going to pan out. But sometimes a dumper might be thinking to themselves, I just want a break and hopefully we can get back together in the future. Or alternatively, they might be thinking, no, this is forever. Now, from my experience, when people say we're having a break, in actual reality, it is a breakup, and normally they're just using a softly approach. But I digress. When we're considering post-breakup closure, I certainly believe that, like I said, a dumper should be saying their goodbyes at the time of a breakup. They need to make things clear. We need to make themselves understood. And we need to be saying goodbye. They need to be making sure that the dumpee has little to no reason to be confused about what they are actually saying. Now, if you're the dumpee and you're listening to this, do I believe that you need to be contacting your dumper post-breakup to say goodbye? No, I don't. Because this, I believe, if you're actually asking that question, is almost making an excuse for why you as a dumpee could be reaching out to your dumper. And dumpees will often do this subconsciously, trying to find ways as to why they should be reaching out to their ex. All of a sudden saying, look, I didn't actually say my goodbyes properly. Yes, they dumped me, but I just wanted to say a few more things to them. I didn't get a chance. I need to reach out to them so I can do this. Well, in my opinion, you shouldn't be doing this. Most dumpees, in my opinion, should never contact their ex again unless their ex contacts them first once the breakup is settled. And again, I appreciate it can be sometimes confusing as to when we are in the breakup and when we are now in post-breakup, because sometimes those lines are blurred. But if you feel that you've had that breakup conversation, then I would say, if you're honest with yourself, anything beyond that is post-breakup. And I do not believe you as a dumpee should be reaching out to your ex for some type of goodbye closure context. Now, if you're going through the breakup as a dumpee, it's of course a very emotional time, and you might not be thinking straight. In fact, I'm pretty sure you wouldn't be thinking straight. However, it was important for you to try to say your piece at the time as well. During the breakup, saying your piece about why you think this relationship should continue. And even if your ex is adamant that they want to be your ex, they want to be your dumper, this is when you can really say your part regarding your goodbyes, and if they ever want to speak with you again, to contact you, etc., etc. I do not believe that post-breakup a dumpee has any real reason to be reaching out to their dumper, and certainly not for post-breakup closure, because I just don't think that's going to help your cause. If you want to try to get your ex back, then this, in my opinion, is not necessarily a good move. In fact, it's probably a very bad move most of the time. So just to try and summarise point number one, I believe that both the dumper and dumpee need to say their piece at the time of the breakup. In particular, the dumper needs to be making sure that everything they say is very clear. Post-breakup, I do not think a dumpee should reach out, and I also don't think a dumper should be reaching out to their ex for any other reason other than wanting to have a conversation with the idea of potentially reconnecting. So in essence, I do not believe that post-breakup, the dumper or dumpee should be reaching out for any type of goodbyes, any type of closure, because this can just be even more confusing. Please, dumpers, only reach out if you want to have a conversation with an idea of maybe getting together potentially once more, or at least seeing how it could go. And as a dumpee, you really shouldn't be reaching out unless your ex does first. So now let's get into point number two and the second point of today's podcast. Please like this video if you're watching on YouTube and subscribe to the channel. And point number two is if you hear that they are moving house. So again, we're referencing the main elements of today's podcast, the truth on if you should say bye to your ex. Now, what happens if you find out that your ex is moving house? What happens if a friend of a friend tells you, maybe you see it on social media, maybe a family member lets you know that they've heard of somebody, that your ex is about to move away. And they're not just moving down the street. They're not just moving to the next town. They're moving very, very far away. Should you, in this instance, be reaching out to your ex, whether it's a dumper or dumpee, and saying goodbye? Now look, I'm not here to tell you exactly what you need to be doing, because this is your life. These are your moments, your experiences, and the ramifications are connected with you. So at the end of the day, you need to do what you feel is right. But I'm going to give you my opinion based on years of research and what I would do in your situation. But you need to be focusing on your specific elements to do what you're comfortable with. Because especially if your ex is moving away, you've got to understand that, of course, this is a moment where you might not see them in the physical sense for a long time moving forward. So you need to be doing what you feel is right for you. But in my opinion, if you hear that your ex is moving away, I would still be very, very cautious of reaching out to them to say some type of goodbye. Now, the reason I say this is if you are the dumper, then you've already ended the relationship. You've made the decision that you don't want to be moving forward with this connection. And therefore, if you reach out to your dumpee at this stage to say some type of goodbye, this could really confuse the situation once more. The dumpee might think you want to get together long distance after you've moved. Now, if this is the case, then that's absolutely fine. If you actually want that to happen, then yes, please reach out. But if you don't want this to happen, then I don't understand what you feel you can get from reaching out to your dumpee, stirring up those feelings and emotions, and potentially taking them off centre once again. Now, there is a big caveat to this, and that is if you're a dumper and you feel that there's something you need to apologise for or get off your chest in a different regard to just saying, hey, I'm going, goodbye, then yes, this could be an opportunity for you to reach out to your dumpee and say, look, I'm moving house. Do you want to meet up? I just need to say a few things. I need to hand you over some items that I still have in my house of yours. And we need to just kind of sort things out once and for all before I move away. Now, this is something that I completely respect a dumper might want to do, and I think that's a good thing. if you need to apologise for something, if you need to hand your dumpee possessions, then yes, reaching out to them, saying you're moving house, and you need to say your goodbyes along with doing these things, then yes, I think that's a good idea. And similarly, if you're a dumpee and you find out your dumper is moving away and you have their items, again, this could be a moment where you do reach out. Generally speaking, I don't suggest a dumpee reaches out to their ex unless their dumper reaches out first. However, if you find out that your dumper is moving away and you have items of theirs that you genuinely think that they need or that you think they could really gain some value from, then yes, this could be a moment. Is it necessarily going to end well, so to speak, with you getting back together? Probably not. Not if your expert dumper hasn't reached out to you first, because this wouldn't suggest that they've regrown romantic emotional attraction. But you never know. Some instances can grow from scenarios that we just can't expect or predict. So if there is something to hand over between you, if there are apologies that you genuinely feel needed to be made, whether you are the dumper or the dumpee, again, maybe this is an instance where something's burning on your mind and you need to apologise and you feel, this might be my last chance in a while to say this face to face. Yes, this could be a moment to reach out, see if they'll want to meet up and maybe say some goodbyes along with handing over possessions and saying your apologies. But if you don't have possessions, if you don't have anything to apologise for, I'm not entirely sure how this is going to help you or your ex, whether you are the dumper or the dumpee. I just worry that it could stir up emotions and feelings which are going to cause pain and anguish to one another that are not going to be rectified anytime soon if you are moving away. So, to summarise, if you're a dumpee, if you're a dumper, it almost doesn't matter in this regard, in my opinion. If you find out your ex is moving away, you should only be reaching out to say your goodbyes if you want to meet up to exchange items or say something such as an apology that's really burning on your mind. I don't think you should be just doing it to say goodbye, but of course, again, this has to be what you want to do because this is your life and the implications are going to be felt by you and your ex. Now, if you would like advice and support about how to try and increase the chance of one day getting your ex back, then you may want to consider my audio coaching service, where me and you can speak one-on-one about your unique specific situation. Go to my website, www.dateme.tips, for more information about how I can become your coach and your teammate via my audio coaching service. So now let's get into point number 3 and the final point of today's podcast about the truth on if you should say bye to your ex. And point number 3 is if you're together in the same building. So this is a situation which could arise after your breakup has taken place, where you find out that your ex is in the same building as you. Now there are a few examples. Maybe, for instance, you're at the same party. Maybe, for instance, you're at the same event. Maybe, for instance, you're in a building such as a gym and you realise that after you've been working out, your ex has just walked in. Now, this is potentially a lot more likely to happen to you than maybe the other points in today's podcast, and this is why it's so important to listen to what I believe is the best move after many years of being a relationship breakup and life coach. So I would suggest that if you find out that you are at a venue and your ex walks in, I believe that you should not approach them unless they approach you. However, if you're going to cross paths, if your eyes do meet, you should smile and say hi. Don't act awkward. Don't pretend you haven't seen them if it's absolutely obvious that you have. But you want to be showcasing yourself as somebody who is centered, happy, carefree, and fun. It's going to be very difficult, but you can do it. So what happens if, for instance, you're at a party or you're at the gym and you find out your ex is in the same building and you kind of notice that they're on the other side of a room, you haven't really interacted, you feel a bit awkward, but you're okay doing what you're doing. And then you get to the stage of the day or the evening where you realise that you want to go. It's time for you to go. What do you do? Do you approach your ex to say goodbye? Well, in my opinion, whether you are the dumper or the dumpee, I believe you should be moving forward in a way very similar to how I've just suggested you do on the entrance. Meaning, I don't suggest you walk up to your ex to say goodbye. However, if you cross paths, if your eyes match up, then you should be saying hi, or in this instance, if you're leaving, saying goodbye, smiling, and continue going. So in essence, what I'm suggesting is don't go out of your way to speak with your ex. If you're a dumpee, you certainly shouldn't be doing this, but if your ex-dumper approaches you, then of course you can have a conversation if you feel comfortable. Now, if you are the dumper, I do not believe you should approach your dumpee unless you have a valid and important conversation to have, or if you're starting to feel that you miss your dumpee and you may want to reconnect. They are good reasons, but approaching them for no particular reason and confusing their emotions is not a good enough reason. So, whether you're a dumper or a dumpee, generally speaking, if you see your ex, you should be acknowledging them with a smile and a hi or a goodbye. But if you aren't crossing paths, then don't deliberately approach each other unless there is a really good reason. If you can't avoid one another, don't look away, don't look awkward, it's not going to help your cause. Smile, say hi, or in this instance, say goodbye. If you believe that this podcast has helped you, then please consider buying me a coffee. The link to do so is in the description.